My name's Kevin. I'm 27, and up until about 2 years ago, I still held out hope that my family would eventually come around and see me as more than the convenient scapegoat they molded me into. But people don't change just because you hope they will. Sometimes they double down. And when they do, all that's left is for you to stop hoping and start remembering who you are. I grew up as the oldest of three. Then came Rachel, the golden child, and Eric, the accidental caboose who was too young to matter in any of the family politics. From the outside, it probably looked like we were close. Family holiday photos, polite comments on Facebook, the usual digital facade. But behind the scenes, I was the one expected to clean up everyone's messes. When Rachel crashed her car in college, I was the one who drained my savings to help her keep it quiet so she wouldn't lose her internship. When mom forgot to pay the electric bill 3 months in a row and tried to blame it on Eric playing video games, I quietly covered it. No, thank you. Just a head tilt and a vague, well, that's what you're supposed to do for family, right? I kept doing it for years. Every favor, every dollar, every piece of emotional labor, I gave it without a fight. I thought that maybe, just maybe, if I kept showing up, they'd finally see me as someone they could be proud of. That illusion shattered last November on what should have been a normal afternoon. Rachel had just gotten engaged to her longtime boyfriend, Brandon. We weren't close, but he always struck me as one of those harmlessly bland types. He wore boat shoes to Thanksgiving and said things like, "Killer spread, Mrs. C." Still, I was genuinely happy for her. I thought this might be the moment we all turned a corner. I texted her congratulations, offered to help however I could, and even volunteered to handle their honeymoon costs as a wedding gift. She responded with a half-hearted THX, and I didn't think much of it. Then, 2 weeks ago, I got a call from mom while I was wrapping up work. I still don't know if she meant to let the venom in her voice slip through, or if she genuinely didn't care that I heard it. "Don't even think about showing up to the wedding," she snapped before I could say hello. "Rachel's finally going to have the perfect day she deserves, and we're not going to let you ruin it." I was quiet for a second, trying to figure out what she was talking about. I wasn't planning on making a speech or doing anything flashy. I was just going to show up, clap at the right moments, maybe hug a few people. "Ruin it how?" I asked slowly. Her voice dropped into that sickly sweet tone she always used when she wanted to disguise something cruel. "Kevin, you've never exactly looked the part. You know that, right? You always dress like you're going to a job interview, and not a good one. And the way you hover around? It's off-putting. Rachel doesn't want you in the photos. She asked me to tell you, and frankly, I agree." I couldn't breathe for a second. It felt like my ears were ringing. All the years I'd bent over backward for them, all the effort to be supportive, and now I was being told I didn't even deserve a seat at the wedding, that I'd somehow ruined their perfect little family image by simply existing in the background. I could hear Rachel's voice in the background too, light, dismissive, laughing like this whole thing was some kind of inside joke. "Tell him he can send a gift though," she called out. "He's still good for that." I didn't raise my voice. I didn't yell or defend myself. I just smiled. It was the same smile I used to give my boss when he tried to dump his work on me. The one that says, "You have no idea what I'm about to do." "Sure," I said, my tone light. "I understand." She hung up without another word. I opened my laptop, logged into the joint account I'd set up for the honeymoon gift, and reversed the transfer. $4,200, back into my pocket in 5 seconds. I took a screenshot of the reversal and texted it to mom with a simple caption. I wouldn't want to ruin anything. No reply, but I know she saw it. She always reads messages obsessively. Now here's the part they really don't know. Last year, I quietly invested in a chain of mid-tier venues that were struggling post-pandemic. One of them happened to be the exact location Rachel bragged about booking on Instagram, Lakeview Ridge, the one with the big white gazebo and overpriced brunch menu. The moment I recognized it in her post, I double-checked my emails. Yup, it was under our portfolio. Not only did I partially own it, I had final sign-off power on all large events held there, including, say, weddings. At first, I considered pulling the plug immediately, just canceling the booking, watching them scramble. But that felt too easy, too quick. They wouldn't feel it. They wouldn't understand it. I wanted them to stew in their own smugness a little longer. I wanted them to post their countdown stories, their dress fittings, their seating chart arguments. I wanted them to laugh behind my back just a few more times. So instead, I've been watching. Patiently. Waiting. I made a few quiet calls to the event coordinator at Lakeview Ridge, asking to be notified if there were any concerns or issues with the Carsons' wedding reservation. I reviewed the contract. And let me tell you, it's airtight, except for one tiny clause buried deep in the fine print. Full payment is required 10 days before the event, or the booking is considered forfeited. Not delayed, not postponed, forfeited. The wedding is in 12 days. And as of this morning, no final payment has been submitted. I didn't need to do anything yet. Just wait. Watch. Let them keep treating me like a footnote, like a burden they'd rather crop out of the pictures. Let them keep smiling for the camera, completely unaware that the floor they're standing on was laid by the one person they deemed unworthy of standing beside them. It was amazing how quickly people forgot where their money came from once it was no longer being handed to them in silence. I hadn't heard a single word from Rachel or my mom since that phone call. Not even a half-hearted, maybe you could come to the rehearsal dinner as a peace offering. Nothing. Just silence and smugness. But that's the thing about silence. It lets you hear everything they don't say out loud. I spent the next few days doing something I hadn't done in a long time, living my life without them. I hit the gym again, cleaned up my apartment, took myself out to dinner. For once, my phone wasn't blowing up with requests for favors or emergency money transfers. It was peaceful, quiet in the kind of way that feels earned, like the calm before a controlled storm. But then, 5 days before the wedding, I got a notification from the venue's coordinator, Amy. She's been with Lakeview Ridge for years and has seen more family meltdowns than a therapist. She's sharp, composed, and a little too observant for her own good. Her message was short and polite, but the subtext was crystal clear. Hey Kevin, just checking in. The Carson party still hasn't submitted the final payment. I've sent 2 reminders with no reply. Let me know how you want to handle it, since it's close to the deadline. I called her back that afternoon, and we talked through it. I kept my tone casual, professional. If it's not paid by the deadline, we'll consider the booking void per policy. Just follow the contract. Amy hesitated. You sure? I mean, they're really banking on this thing. They've got like 15 vendors scheduled. A whole live string quartet. And there's talk of releasing doves during the vows. I smiled faintly. Doves? Huh? Classy. She laughed quietly. Okay. I'll follow protocol. Deadline's in 2 days. Now, I could have warned them. I could have texted Rachel a simple, hey, just so you know, your payment's late. But I didn't. Because they made it clear I wasn't family. Not important enough to stand in a photo. Not important enough to warrant a chair. Just a walking wallet with a pulse. And that's when I decided I wasn't going to interfere. I was going to let the natural consequences of their carelessness do all the work for me. On the morning of the deadline, I took the day off work and treated myself to a good breakfast, eggs, coffee, extra crispy bacon. I checked my email around noon. Still nothing. No payment. No message. No Hail Mary, oh my God, we forgot. Just radio silence. That night, Amy marked the booking as canceled in our system. At 7:18 p.m., I got a call from a number I didn't recognize. I let it go to voicemail. 30 seconds later, another call. Same number. I finally picked up. Hi, is this Kevin? This is Teresa. I'm Rachel's wedding planner. I nearly laughed. Of course it was. Yes, I said, keeping my voice neutral. So, we're just trying to sort out a minor issue with the venue. I understand there was some kind of system error and the final payment didn't go through. Probably a glitch with our account. But we were hoping to confirm everything is still on track for Saturday. I leaned back in my chair, glanced at the ceiling. No system error. The payment deadline passed last night. The booking's been released. Silence. I could hear her breathing, and in the background, the muffled sound of someone arguing. Then her voice returned, thin and nervous. But surely you can make an exception, right? I mean, this is a once-in-a-lifetime event. The bride's already got her gown. Guests are flying in. Teresa, I interrupted gently, I understand. But the contract is the contract. If they wanted it locked in, they should have paid on time. We've been more than generous with reminders. She stammered a bit before trailing off with a shaky, I'll talk to Rachel. The next call came less than an hour later. This time it was Mom. Kevin, she barked. No greeting. What is going on with the venue? Rachel is in tears. They said the booking was canceled because of you. I raised an eyebrow. Me? I didn't cancel anything. The deadline passed. I just happened to know the coordinator. You knew and you didn't say anything. You let this happen? I let what happen? You mean I didn't step in and cover for your mistake again? There was a beat of silence. Then her voice turned cold. Do you really hate your sister that much? No, I said slowly, clearly. I just finally decided to stop letting you all treat me like I'm disposable. You said I'd ruin the photos. So I took myself out of the picture. You always have to make it about you, she spat. No, I said again, quieter this time. You did. You made it about me the second you decided I wasn't worth a chair at your perfect wedding. I'm just following your lead. She hung up without another word. That night, I got a text from Rachel. No greeting. No emoji. Just this. You seriously couldn't have warned us? And then, a second later, wow. You're a bitter little man. I didn't reply. I didn't need to. Because the next part? That was entirely in my hands now. The venue was gone. Their dream wedding had no foundation. Vendors were pulling out. Doves were staying caged. And they still had no idea just how deep this rabbit hole went. Because while they were scrambling to find a last-minute location, I was sitting on a little secret. They thought the worst had already happened. They didn't realize that I wasn't done yet. Not even close. The following morning, I woke up to a dozen new texts and 3 missed calls, 2 from Rachel, 1 from Brandon. The texts ranged from thinly veiled guilt trips, "This is still family, Kevin," no matter what happened, to flat-out insults, "I can't believe you're so petty you'd sabotage your own sister's wedding." I read them all over coffee, scrolled through without reacting. They didn't know the half of it. See, Rachel and Brandon had spent the last year parading this wedding around like it was some royal event. Magazine-style engagement photos, a custom website with a countdown, a color palette with 4 shades of soft champagne. The venue wasn't just a pretty location, it was the entire brand. Lakeview Ridge was the backdrop in every one of their online posts, their Pinterest board. Even the RSVP envelopes had a watercolor painting of the gazebo. It was a curated fantasy, and they'd built it on borrowed money and other people's generosity, including mine. They hadn't told anyone I was paying for the honeymoon. They took the money, smiled for Instagram, and acted like it was just something Brandon pulled out of thin air. The worst part? I was proud of them. I actually wanted them to have a beautiful start. But apparently, the ugly brother didn't fit the theme. And now, with 4 days to go, the clock was ticking. They were scrambling to find a new venue, and I knew how that process looked from the inside. Nothing decent was available at that short notice, especially not one that could accommodate the number of guests they were expecting. Even if they found a backup, everything from their floral arrangements to their ceremony setup would have to be redone. And the real kicker? They bragged for months about the custom package they negotiated at Lakeview Ridge. What they didn't know was that the coordinator, Amy, gave them that rate because I told her to. I wanted to gift it without the awkwardness. Now that the booking was void, that rate was gone. If they did manage to rebook, it would cost them double if we let them back in at all. I got another call that afternoon, this time from Brandon. Hey, Kevin. Listen, I know there's been some tension, but I wanted to clear the air, man to man. I said nothing, letting him twist in the silence. He cleared his throat. Look, Rachel's been really upset. This wedding, it means a lot to her. To both of us. I'm sure we can figure something out, right? Like, you have connections at the venue. You could pull a few strings. Get us back in. Brandon, I said calmly, did you know I was the one paying for your honeymoon? He was quiet for a second. What? The honeymoon. The resort package you two posted about. The one with the villa and the private chef. That was me. $4,200. I sent it 2 months ago. No, I didn't know that. Of course you didn't, I said. Because your fiancée didn't want you to. She told me I'd ruin the photos. That she didn't want me there. So I took back the honeymoon. And now, you're asking me to step in and rescue the wedding. Another pause. I imagined him sitting there, staring at the wall like a kid realizing he hadn't done the homework. I'm not trying to take sides, he said, his voice quieter. But I don't think you understand how stressed Rachel is. This is her day. I almost laughed. Oh, I understand. I just don't care anymore. Click. 3 hours later, I got an email from Amy with the subject line, "Update on Carson's." I opened it. In short, Rachel had called the venue, sobbing. Claimed she was blindsided by the cancellation, that it was unfair and completely unethical. She demanded to speak to the owner directly. Amy asked if I wanted to respond personally. I told her, not yet. Instead, I did something better. I logged into the venue's website backend and added a small update to their homepage. Please note, Lakeview Ridge is proud to host a private corporate event on April 27th. No wedding bookings will be honored on this date. That was their wedding day. I didn't use their names. I didn't have to. Anyone looking for a last-minute rebooking would see it. Every other venue in the area would assume we were booked solid. I had just quietly turned off the lights on every backup plan they had. That night, my aunt messaged me. Aunt Claire texted, "Hi, sweetheart. Can we talk?" Rachel's devastated. "Your mom is beside herself." I stared at it for a while. I replied, "She said I'd ruin her photos." I took that seriously. She left me on read. The next morning, the group chat lit up. Not mine, theirs. My cousin forwarded me screenshots. My mom was furious. Blaming me. Blaming Amy. Blaming Mercury in retrograde, for all I know. She ranted about how this wasn't how family treated each other, how she'd bent over backwards to include me. Rachel chimed in with a gem. "He's been jealous since high school. I always knew he'd find a way to make it about him." Jealous. That word hit like a slap and a punch wrapped in silk. Jealous of what? The curated spotlight she lived under? The endless stream of fake compliments and whispered betrayals? I had built everything I owned by working quietly while they posed for pictures. I gave without asking for credit. And now, apparently, I was bitter for not letting them set me on fire one more time. So I made a choice. I forwarded everything to Amy and said, "You can respond now. Tell them the owner reviewed the situation and denied the rebooking. Per policy." Then I picked up the phone and made one more call. A friend of mine named Carter runs a high-end catering company downtown. He owed me a favor. I asked him for a little something for Saturday. Nothing big. Just a modest corporate luncheon. 10 people. Same day, same time. Same venue. He laughed. "You want me to book the place out on their wedding day?" "Not just book it," I said. "I want photos. Instagram. The works. Tag the venue. Hashtag the event. Make it look like the best catered celebration of the year." He was quiet for a second. "Damn, Kevin, you're really doing this." I smiled. They asked me not to show up to the wedding. So I won't. But that didn't mean I wouldn't leave my mark. Saturday arrived with the kind of weather brides pray for: crisp air, not a cloud in sight, soft sunlight filtering through early spring leaves. The lake at Lakeview Ridge was still, reflective like glass, and the white gazebo gleamed against a backdrop of budding cherry blossoms. It was perfect. Idyllic. And not at all what Rachel was expecting. I got up early that morning, not because I needed to, but because I wanted to savor every minute. I took my time showering, brewed the good coffee, even ironed my shirt. Not to wear, just to feel a little sharper. Then I sat by the window, phone in hand, watching the chaos unfold in real time. The first post came from a distant cousin, Rachel's college roommate. A confused selfie in her car. "Is the venue closed? Just got here and no one's answering the gate. Please tell me I'm not the only one who didn't get a cancellation notice." I sipped my coffee, refreshed the tag. More followed. Bridesmaids in full makeup, standing outside the locked gate with their arms crossed. Groomsmen in rental tuxedos, pacing beside parked cars. A flower girl asleep in someone's back seat, her tiara sliding off. They hadn't told anyone. That was the part one hadn't expected. I figured Rachel or my mother would have done damage control, at least sent out a mass text. But no. They were so convinced everything would work out, so sure someone, me, would swoop in to save them at the last second, that they hadn't even warned their guests. Entitlement turned to paralysis. Then came the post that made me laugh out loud. Lakeview Ridge, hosting a beautiful lakeside luncheon for a special team today. Nothing like a little sun, spring air, and great food to celebrate big wins. Hashtag private event, hashtag booked out, hashtag corporate luxury. 3 long tables draped in white. Crystal glassware. Waiters in black vests. A champagne pyramid. In the background, barely visible, but unmistakable, was Rachel's custom floral arch, now repurposed for our luncheon's dessert bar. The sign she had painted by an Etsy artist, "Forever Starts Here," was flipped and relettered by Carter's team to say, "Success starts here." I wish I could have seen her face. Around noon, I got a call from Amy. I picked up immediately. "Kevin," she said, barely containing a chuckle. "We have guests trying to climb the side gate." I laughed. "Please tell me that's a joke." "Nope." One of the groomsmen swears he knows someone inside. I told them the property is under private booking and that security has been notified. "They bring the doves?" "Oh, yes. 2 handlers and a crate. They're sitting on the curb looking very confused." I chuckled again, slower this time. "You've been amazing, Amy. Really. I owe you big for this." "You don't owe me anything," she said. This is the best Saturday shift I've had in years. At 2:41 p.m., the inevitable happened. My mom called. I let it ring. Then Rachel. Then Brandon. Then my aunt. I didn't answer a single one. Instead, I opened the group text, the one I was still silently in, even though they'd stopped tagging me months ago, and typed exactly 2 words: "You're welcome." Then I left the chat. That night, I heard from Eric, my younger brother, the only one in the family who'd ever treated me like an actual person. He wasn't at the wedding. He called me the day after I pulled the honeymoon fund, said, "If they're going to act like you don't exist, I'm not pretending they're saints." He stayed quiet, respectful, but I could hear in his voice he'd had enough, too. His message was short. "Eric, I saw the posts. I don't even know what to say, but I'm proud of you." They needed to be humbled. "I'll call tomorrow." And for once, I felt it. Not just pride, not just relief, closure. Because here's the thing. People like Rachel, like my mother, they build their world on optics, on appearances, the seating charts, the dress fittings, the stories they'll tell over a drink in 5 years. What I gave them wasn't just a ruined wedding. It was a shattered illusion. No one would remember how stunning her dress was. They'd remember standing outside a locked venue in heels for 2 hours. They'd remember the doves that never flew, the brunch that was served to a corporate team while the wedding guests stood in the parking lot, the whispered questions: why didn't they pay? Didn't they have help? And eventually, someone would point out that maybe, just maybe, Rachel wasn't the victim. Maybe the brother she tried to erase had simply said enough. 2 days later, my mother showed up at my door. She didn't knock. She pounded. I waited a minute, then opened it slowly. She looked exhausted. Her mascara had dried into the wrinkles beneath her eyes. Her blazer was wrinkled, her posture hunched. But her tone? Still sharp. "You think you proved something?" she hissed. "No," I said calmly. "I know I did. You humiliated your sister." I looked at her for a long time. "She humiliated me. You did too. For years. You just thought I'd keep taking it. That I'd always show up, clean up, and keep quiet. Not anymore." She stepped forward like she wanted to argue, like she had a speech prepared. But I didn't give her the space. I bought the venue. I paid for the honeymoon. I supported this family when no one else did. And you erased me for optics. So this time, you got erased." She stood there, trembling. But she didn't say anything else. Finally, I added, "You can tell Rachel I'm not angry. I'm free. That's a better gift than anything on her registry." And I shut the door. A month passed. Then 2. I didn't hear from them. Eric and I grabbed dinner twice a week now. We talked about work, about life. Sometimes, we even laughed about the great wedding disaster of the year. I'd gotten a few sly messages from people who had been at the event, congratulating me without really saying what they were congratulating me for. And that was enough. I didn't need a parade. I didn't need a public moment. I had peace. I had power. And for the first time in years, I had a family that I chose, not the one that tried to write me out of their perfect picture. So I took the frame, and I burned it. You ever get the feeling that you're just there? Like, you exist in a space, but nobody really sees you? That's how it had always been with my family. I wasn't the golden child, wasn't the troublemaker. Just the one in between, the one who did what was expected but never quite enough. It started small. Little things. My parents forgetting to save me a plate at dinner. My brother taking my things without asking, knowing no one would care when I complained. They never outright said I wasn't wanted, at least, not at first. But it was always there, in the way they talked around me, in the way my existence seemed to be an afterthought. I tried to brush it off. Families weren't perfect, right? Maybe I was just being sensitive. Maybe if I worked harder, did better, they'd finally see me as someone worth keeping around, so I tried. Hard. I made sure my grades were solid. I helped out around the house. I stayed out of trouble, but it never seemed to matter. My brother, though, he could do whatever he wanted. Talk back, skip chores, fail a class, didn't matter. My parents would make excuses for him. "He's just a kid. He's going through a tough time. You should be more supportive of him." Every time I pointed out the difference in how we were treated, I was the problem. I was being difficult. And then, one day, the resentment boiled over. But not from me, from them. It was a Saturday night. I had just gotten home from work. Nothing special, just a part-time job at a local grocery store. I worked weekends to save up some money since my parents never really gave me much. My brother, on the other hand, didn't have to lift a finger. Anything he wanted, he got. That I walked into the house, exhausted, and the first thing I saw was him sitting on the couch, controller in hand, completely zoned into his game. A half-eaten plate of food sat on the table, and on the floor, my backpack, open, my notebooks and papers scattered across the rug. Dude, what the hell? I sighed, bending down to pick up my stuff. Oh yeah, he muttered, not even looking away from the screen. Needed paper. Took some. I flipped through my notebook, stomach sinking. My notes, the ones I had spent hours on, were gone. Torn out, I clenched my jaw. Are you serious? Finally, he looked at me. Relax. It's just some dumb notes. Not like you do anything important anyway. That hit harder than it should have. Maybe because deep down, I knew that's how he really saw me. How they all saw me. Where are they? I asked, my voice tight, but he scoffed. Dunno. Probably in the trash. I don't know what it was about that moment, but something inside me snapped. Not in an angry, screaming way. Just a cold, quiet realization I wasn't one of them. Not really. That I took a deep breath, forcing myself to stay calm. You're unbelievable, I muttered, walking past him toward the kitchen. That's when my parents walked in, and that's when everything went downhill. My mom and dad walked in, laughing about something, some inside joke between them, something I was never part of. But the moment they saw me standing there, the mood shifted. What's with the attitude? My dad asked, eyes narrowing. I exhaled sharply, still gripping my ruined notebook. Ask him, I said, nodding toward my brother. He tore out my notes. Just threw them away like they were nothing. My mom barely glanced at him. It's just paper, she said, waving a dismissive hand. I looked between them, waiting for something. Even just a "that wasn't cool," or "don't do that again." But nothing. Instead, my brother smirked. Yeah, it's just paper, he echoed. Like he knew he'd already won. I felt my fingers tighten around the notebook. Right. Of course. I turned to go upstairs, but my dad's voice stopped me. You know, this attitude is exactly why no one wants to be around you. I froze. What? I asked, turning slowly to my mom's side like she was tired of me already. You overreact to everything. Always playing the victim, always causing problems. Causing problems? I let out a bitter laugh. For what? Expecting basic respect? For not wanting my stuff trashed? My brother snorted. God, you're so dramatic. I shook my head. You guys act like I'm the issue, but you don't even see what's happening. You just let him do whatever he wants. Dad folded his arms. Because he's not the one constantly whining. That hit hard. But not as hard as what came next. My brother leaned back on the couch, arms stretched behind his head, and smirked. No one wants you here, man. I felt my stomach drop, but it was my parents' reaction that broke something in me. They nodded. They actually nodded. My mom didn't say a word. My dad didn't argue. They just stood there, silent, as if that was a fact they had accepted a long time ago. I didn't yell. I didn't beg for them to take it back. That I just breathed. And something inside me went cold. Okay, I said simply, and I walked upstairs to pack my bags. And I left. But this wasn't the end. Not even close. Because the next morning, my phone was blowing up with 12 missed calls. And that's when I knew leaving was the best decision I had ever made. I didn't answer the calls. Not at first. I just stared at my phone, watching as the notifications kept piling up. My brother, my dad, even my mom. For a family that didn't want me, they sure were desperate to reach me now. I let it ring. I wasn't in a rush. After leaving last night, I didn't even have a plan. I had thrown my things into a duffel bag and walked out, feeling numb. I crashed at a friend's place, someone who actually gave a damn about me. He didn't ask questions, didn't push, just handed me a blanket, said, "You can stay as long as you need." It was more kindness than my own family had shown me in years. But now they wanted something. And I had a feeling it wasn't because they missed me. By the time the calls finally stopped, a few texts started rolling in. The first ones were just as I expected. Mom texted, "You're being immature. Come back." Dad texted, "Enough of this nonsense. You need to stop acting like a child." I scoffed. Yeah, I really left. and they clearly weren't sorry. Then, a new message came in, one that changed everything. Mom texted, "Come home now. We have a problem." I stared at the screen, my pulse picking up. "A problem?" I debated ignoring it. But curiosity got the best of me, so I finally texted back. Just 2 words, "What happened?" Her reply came almost instantly. "Your brother screwed up. Bad." And just like that, I knew. They didn't miss me. They didn't want me back. They needed me. And that gave me an idea. I leaned back against the couch, staring at my phone. So now they needed me? Interesting, I wasn't in a hurry to respond. Instead, I let them sweat a little. If my brother had really screwed up, then whatever happened was big enough that my parents, who had never once taken my side, were now reaching out. After about 10 minutes of silence, more messages started rolling in. Dad texted, "We don't have time for your attitude. Just come home." Mom texted, "Please. This is serious." Serious? That almost made me laugh. When my problems were serious, they told me to get over it. But now that my brother was in trouble, suddenly it was urgent. I took my time typing my next response. "Not my problem." A minute passed. Then another. Then my dad called. I let it ring. Declined. A second later, a text popped up. "Dad, you're being selfish." I exhaled sharply through my nose. Selfish? That was rich, coming from him. Then my mom texted again. "Mom, your brother's been arrested." I blinked. Okay. Now I was interested. I grabbed my friend's car keys off the counter. "I need a ride." He raised an eyebrow. "You sure? Thought you were done with them." I smirked. "Oh, I am. But I need to see this for myself." 15 minutes later, I pulled up in front of my house. My dad was pacing on the porch, phone in hand, looking more stressed than I'd ever seen him. My mom sat on the steps, head in her hands. For once, there was no laughter, no dismissive remarks, just pure, panicked silence. I took my time walking up. "So," I said casually, "who wants to tell me what happened?" My dad turned, eyes sharp. "Where the hell have you been?" I raised an eyebrow. "Not here. Like you wanted." He clenched his jaw, but before he could say anything, my mom spoke. "It's your brother," she said, voice shaking. He stole something. From the wrong people." I frowned. The wrong people? Dad ran a hand over his face. "Some guys at that arcade he hangs out at. We don't know the details, but they called the cops. He's in holding right now." I almost laughed. Of course. My brother had spent years treating me like garbage, thinking he was untouchable. And now, the real world had hit him like a truck. That I crossed my arms. "And what do you want me to do about it?" Mom gave me a desperate look. "We need money for a lawyer. Bail. Something. We need your help." I stared at her for a long moment. Then, finally, I smiled. They needed me, but I didn't need them. After all the years of pushing me aside, of treating me like I was nothing, now they were looking at me like I was their only hope. And in a way, I was. I tucked my hands into my pockets, tilting my head slightly. "So let me get this straight. You told me I was unwanted. You let my brother treat me like garbage. You didn't care when I walked out. But now that he's in trouble, you suddenly remember I exist?" My dad's jaw tightened. "This isn't about that. This is about family." I laughed. A short, sharp sound. "Oh, now we're family?" That's funny, because last night, I was a burden. Mom's eyes were pleading. "Please, we can talk about all of that later. Right now, we need to get him out before this gets worse." I let out a slow breath, pretending to think it over. "And how much money are we talking about?" Dad sighed. "Bail is set at $10,000. We can pay a portion, but we need you to cover the rest." I whistled. 10 grand, huh? Sounds serious. My mom perked up slightly. "So you'll do it?" I smirked. "Oh, absolutely not." Their faces fell so fast, I almost felt bad. Almost, "Excuse me," my dad snapped. I shrugged. "Not my problem." Mom's voice cracked. "But he's your brother." "No, he's your son," I corrected. "And you made it very clear that I was never part of this family." Dad stepped forward, anger flashing in his eyes. "You think you're proving a point? You think this is funny?" I met his glare without flinching. No, I think it's fair. Mom reached for my arm. We'll pay you back. I took a step back. You think I trust you? The people who threw me away without a second thought. Her mouth opened and closed, but she had nothing to say. I shook my head. Here's what's gonna happen. You're gonna figure this out without me, just like you always wanted. And I'm gonna walk away, just like you told me to. I turned on my heel, making my way back to my friend's car. Behind me, my dad shouted, "Don't you dare walk away from us." I glanced over my shoulder. You already did it first. Then I got in the car and drove away, leaving them in the mess they created. As I drove away, my hands clenched around the steering wheel. I should have felt triumphant. I should have felt like I finally got the last laugh. But instead, I felt hollow. Not because I regretted my decision. No, they had it coming. But because after everything, even after they'd begged for my help, I knew they still didn't see me as family. They just saw me as a solution. A wallet. A safety net. And now, that net was gone. That night, I sat in my apartment, scrolling through my phone while enjoying a nice, greasy burger from my favorite takeout place. It was peaceful, quiet, the kind of night I hadn't had in years living under that roof. I had half a mind to turn my phone on silent, but I couldn't resist checking my notifications. And, surprise, surprise, my family had not given up. Why, Mom had sent 3 messages in a row. We can work something out. Please, let's talk. Your brother is still in jail. We're struggling to get the money together. Please, I know we were harsh before, but we're family. I nearly choked on my soda. Now we're family? Now they cared? That was rich. I was debating whether to even respond when another text popped up, this time from my dad. Look, we can repay you. You just need to trust us. That one actually made me laugh out loud. Trust them? The same people who spent years treating me like an unwanted guest in my own home? The same ones who told me to leave without a second thought? Yeah, right. Just as I was about to put my phone down, another message came in from my brother. Come on, man. You're really gonna let me rot in here? Oh, this was too good. After everything he put me through, all the times he pushed me around, made fun of me, called me useless, and now he wanted my help? I decided to have a little fun. You told me no one wanted me around. I'm just respecting your wishes, smiley face. Delivered. Read. No response. That I smiled to myself, stretched my arms behind my head, and took another bite of my burger. Life was good. The next morning, I woke up to a flood of messages. I groggily rubbed my eyes, unlocked my phone, and started scrolling through them. Apparently, things were getting rough for the family back home. We had to sell the TV and Dad's golf clubs. Your mother is furious with me. Hope you're happy. Please, we don't know what to do anymore. And then, the best one yet, my brother. I swear to God, when I get out, you better pray I don't find you. Now that was hilarious. The same guy who needed my help was threatening me? I decided to respond. That's some strong language for someone who needs my help. Try again. An entire hour passed before my mom finally swallowed her pride and sent another message. Please, we're really struggling. I let her sit in that desperation for a few minutes before replying. Tell you what, I'll bail him out. On one condition. She didn't hesitate. Anything? I smirked. I want a public apology. In the family group chat. A long one. I want you all to admit every horrible thing you've said to me, and I want you to thank me for helping. I knew that would break my dad's pride. But if they wanted my help so badly, they'd have to grovel for it. Sure enough, it took them a while, but eventually, a new message popped up in the family group chat. We need to talk about how we've treated you. We've made mistakes, and we realize now how much we've hurt him. We deeply regret our words and actions. He is an important part of our family, and we are grateful for his generosity in helping us during this difficult time. It was stiff, it was forced, and it was completely humiliating for them. Perfect that I gave them a simple thumbs-up emoji and went about my day. Did I actually bail my brother out? Haha, absolutely not. But at least I finally got the apology I always deserved. The following week, I got a call from my brother. Man, I can't believe you did this to me, he growled through the phone, his voice thick with frustration. I thought you were better than this. I couldn't help but laugh. It wasn't the kind of laugh that was filled with malice, more like the kind of laugh you get when the universe hands you exactly what you deserve. Better than what? I asked, my tone light, almost playful. I'm just giving you what you wanted. You told me I wasn't wanted, remember? So now you get to stay exactly where you belong. I could hear him slamming something against the jail bars in the background. You can't do this. You're really just leaving me here? I let the silence hang in the air for a moment before responding. You know, I thought I might bail you out. I really did. But you and the rest of the family? You've made it pretty clear that I don't matter. I paused, letting the words sink in. So now, I get to laugh. I get to enjoy my life knowing that I'm out here living it on my terms, while you're stuck. Enjoy your stay. He didn't say anything for a while, and I could almost picture him fuming on the other end, but I didn't care. After years of being treated like an afterthought, like some invisible shadow in the background, this was my moment. When I hung up the phone, I felt a wave of relief wash over me. I wasn't angry anymore. In fact, I couldn't even feel that resentment I used to carry around for them. All of it had melted away. And just like that, my brother stayed in jail. They tried everything to get him out, but the charges were serious enough that it was out of their hands. They begged and pleaded, but the truth was, they needed me far more than I ever needed them. As for me, I walked away, head high, knowing that I had finally reclaimed my power. I didn't need to lift a finger to make their lives miserable. They'd already done that for me. All I had to do was sit back, enjoy my peace, and know that they would never, ever see me the same way again. And every time I glanced at my phone, with its constant reminders of how desperate they were, I smiled. Because in the end, it wasn't just about the money. It was about the sweet, satisfying taste of revenge. And for the first time in a long time, I was finally living for me.
Honestly, this story is pretty satisfying. The protagonist was treated terribly by his family, but the way he flipped the script and didn't help his brother out after all that was brilliant. It's like the perfect revenge, and he didn't even have to do anything too drastic. Just let them deal with the consequences. What do you think? Was it the right call, or did he go too far? Would you have helped, or is this payback well deserved? Let me know what you think.
My name's Eli. I'm 34, and I guess you could say I've always been the responsible sibling, not the favorite, not the rebel, not the golden child, just the one who showed up on time, paid my bills, and remembered everyone's birthday. I work in finance, live alone, and don't really make a fuss about much. My family? Well, they're loud, close-knit in that performative way, and very good at pretending everything's just peachy while sweeping real problems under the rug. I've always been sort of adjacent, involved, but not embraced. The kind of guy you invite to weddings but never asked to be in the photos. Growing up, my brother Mason was the star. Charismatic, reckless, and always getting himself into some kind of trouble, but somehow he always landed on his feet. He had this smug charm that my parents ate up like candy. Even when he dropped out of college, blew through 2 jobs, and ended up moving back home at 28, they still defended him like he was the second coming of Einstein. I, on the other hand, paid my own way through school, held down the same job for over a decade, and helped cover part of their mortgage when Dad's hours got cut. But none of that ever seemed to matter, at least, not enough to earn me a seat at the metaphorical head of the table. Still, I never really let it get to me. Or at least, that's what I told myself. I kept my head down, sent the checks, replied to the texts, showed up for holidays, and smiled through the small jabs that always came dressed as jokes. Eli, you're so serious. Loosen up, man. It's just a party. Oh, we figured you'd be busy. You're always working. I took it in stride. I guess part of me hoped that if I just kept showing up, one day I'd be seen as part of the family, not just the one funding it from the background. That illusion shattered last fall. It started with a dinner. Mason had just gotten engaged to a woman named Brooke who my mom had already dubbed an absolute angel, and my parents decided to throw a big celebratory dinner at this swanky rooftop restaurant downtown. Not the kind of place they could usually afford, which, in hindsight, should have tipped me off. I got a call from my mom a few weeks before. Eli, sweetheart, she said in that syrupy tone she uses when she wants something, we'd love it if you could make it to Mason and Brooke's engagement dinner. It's going to be such a special night. Of course, I said without hesitation. Just send me the details. And if it's not too much trouble, she added, lowering her voice, we were hoping you might help with the reservation. Just to hold it, we'll pay you back, obviously. I should have known right then that we'll pay you back meant I'd never see that money again. But like always, I agreed. I called the restaurant, booked a private space for 20 people, and gave them my card for the deposit. I didn't mind. Not really. It was Mason's night. And maybe, just maybe, this time I'd feel like I was truly a part of it. The night of the dinner, I showed up right on time, 7 o'clock sharp. I had on a dark navy suit, freshly pressed shirt, new cufflinks I'd been saving. I brought a nice bottle of champagne for the couple and even printed out a custom card with their initials. When I got to the rooftop, the hostess gave me a small nod and gestured toward the private section. I took a breath and walked in. The space was beautiful, string lights overhead, floral centerpieces on each table, a soft jazz band playing in the corner. And there they all were. My parents, Mason, Brooke, her family, a few of their friends. Everyone already had drinks in hand, laughing, talking, clinking glasses. I smiled and walked over, expecting at least a nod of recognition. Instead, Mason turned to me with that familiar smug grin. "Oh hey," he said, barely glancing at the champagne in my hand. "Glad you made it." Then he pointed toward a fold-out chair set off to the side, next to a trash bin, no less. "Sorry, this table's for family only," he said, with mock sympathy. "But there's a spot for you right over there." I actually blinked. I thought he was joking. I looked at our mom, who just gave me that tight-lipped smile she uses when she doesn't want to get involved. Dad chuckled awkwardly and raised his glass. Brooke didn't even look up. And then, as if on cue, a few people laughed. I stood there for a second too long. I wanted to say something, anything, but my throat closed up. My ears were hot. I felt like I was 13 again, left out of a group photo at a cousin's wedding because I didn't fit the aesthetic. So I walked to the chair, set my bottle beside me on the floor, and sat down alone. I didn't even take my coat off. The waiter came by and asked if I was with the party. I nodded silently. He didn't ask any more questions. Just handed me a glass of water and moved on. I sat there for almost 2 hours while they laughed, toasted, opened gifts. I watched my brother give this long speech about how lucky he was to be surrounded by his closest people. I watched my mom tear up when Brooke called her the best future mother-in-law a girl could ask for. No one even asked if I wanted to order. Eventually, dessert came out, some kind of elaborate layered cake with edible gold flakes. The band played a slow tune. The sun dipped below the skyline, and I realized not a single person had looked in my direction for the past 30 minutes. Then the check came. I watched the waiter walk toward their table with a little leather folder. He paused, looked around, then glanced down at the credit card on file. My card. I watched him take a few steps toward me. "Excuse me, sir," he said quietly. "The total for the event is $3,218. Should I run the same card for the final amount?" Everyone at the table turned to look. My brother raised an eyebrow. "Oh, yeah," he said casually. "Eli's got it." The waiter looked at me, and I smiled. A calm, slow, measured smile. My voice was steady. "Not my table," I said, just loud enough for everyone to hear. I was told this was for family only. There was a silence so sharp it felt like the air had snapped in half. My brother's mouth opened slightly. My mom frowned, confused. Dad sat straighter. Brooke's dad furrowed his brow. The waiter hesitated. "Sir, you made the reservation?" "I did." I nodded. "And I paid the deposit. But I'm not with them. I'm over here, at the side table." I stood slowly, picked up my coat, and nodded toward the trash can, where I belong, apparently. You could almost hear the collective thud of jaws hitting the floor. For a second, nobody moved. The waiter stood awkwardly between tables, holding the bill like it was radioactive. My brother looked like someone had just slapped him with a fish. My mother's eyes narrowed, flickering between me and the check, trying to figure out how this got away from her so fast. "Wait, Eli," she said, her voice low and slightly shaky. "What are you doing?" I shrugged. "Following the seating chart, Mom. Mason said this table was for family only. I assumed that meant I wasn't included." I looked at the waiter. "I didn't eat. I didn't drink. I wasn't welcome. So I won't be paying." "Don't be ridiculous," Mason snapped, the smirk cracking into something uglier. "It's just a joke, man. Lighten up. You always take things so personally." The room had gone quiet. Even the jazz band seemed to be winding down to an awkward hum. All eyes were on me, and for the first time in years, I wasn't shrinking beneath them. "Yeah," I said slowly, "that's the problem. You think everything's a joke, as long as it's at someone else's expense." Brooke looked confused, like she was just now catching on that something real was happening. Her father, a stiff man in a blazer who had barely said a word all night, gave Mason a sharp look. You invited this man to your engagement dinner and sat him next to the trash can, he asked, incredulous. Mason scoffed and looked to my mom for backup. She straightened in her seat and smiled tightly. Let's not blow things out of proportion. Eli's just being dramatic. He's always been sensitive. I almost laughed. That was her go-to line. Always had been. He's just sensitive. He's just tired. He's just overreacting. Any excuse to avoid admitting that something cruel had happened and that they'd let it happen. The waiter cleared his throat. I'm sorry to interrupt again, but the restaurant needs to process the bill before we close the tab on the private space. If the card on file won't be used, I'll need an alternate. Silence. I turned and started to walk toward the elevator. That's when my dad finally spoke. Eli, come on. You've already paid for half. You might as well just finish it. I stopped cold. That sentence, that might as well, snapped something in me. I turned back. You're right, Dad. I did pay the deposit. I even called 3 restaurants to find one with a rooftop view like Mason wanted. I picked the date around his football schedule. I ordered custom floral arrangements because Mom said fake flowers would look cheap in the photos. I paid the $500 non-refundable deposit without blinking, and I showed up on time, alone, in a suit to support my brother. I took a step closer, lowering my voice but not enough to be missed. And what did I get in return? A folding chair next to a garbage bin and a sorry, family only. I turned to Mason. So now you get to figure it out. You and your real family. Mason's face was flushed now, red creeping up his neck. He stood up, trying to puff himself up, but it just made him look more ridiculous. You're making a scene. No, I said. I'm drawing a line. And I walked away. I didn't even bother with the elevator. I took the stairs, every step pounding with adrenaline and disbelief that I'd actually done it. Outside, the night air hit me like a slap, sharp and bracing. I loosened my tie and kept walking. I didn't know where I was going, but I knew I wasn't going back. I thought maybe that would be the end of it, a bold exit, a few awkward apologies later, maybe even a half-hearted attempt to brush it under the rug. But what I didn't know was just how deep the consequences of that moment would go. Because later that night, long after I'd gotten home, still in my suit, still holding that unopened bottle of champagne like a ghost limb, my phone lit up. First, a text from Mason. Dude, seriously? You couldn't have just paid the check and talked to me after? Then another. From Mom, you embarrassed us in front of Brooke's entire family. Was that your goal? Revenge. And then, a call. From an unknown number. It was Brooke. Hi, she said, her voice quieter than I'd ever heard it. I know we don't really talk, but can I ask you something? Sure, I said cautiously. Did you really pay for everything? The deposit, the flowers, all of it. I paused. Yeah. There was a silence on the other end. Then, they told my dad you offered to. That it was your idea. That stopped me cold. I never offered, I said slowly. They asked. I said yes. I didn't expect anything back. But I definitely didn't do it for show. Brooke sighed. Well, my dad's furious. He thought you volunteered as a kind gesture. But now he's saying he wouldn't have agreed to the restaurant if he'd known it was being paid for by someone they basically shoved in the corner. I didn't say anything. He said Mason and your parents made him look like a fool. Another pause. I'm not calling to get involved, she added quickly. I just thought you should know. I thanked her, and we hung up. But the fallout had only just begun. Over the next few days, things escalated faster than I expected, and not in the way my family probably anticipated. It started with the group chat. You know the one, the big family thread that usually lit up around birthdays and holidays with recycled gifts, blurry food pics, and Happy Friday texts from my aunt. I hadn't heard a peep from it since the night of the dinner, but suddenly it roared back to life. Mom, Eli, we need to talk. Call me when you have a minute. Mason, you seriously messed things up with Brooke's family. You owe us a fix. Dad, this is getting out of hand. Just apologize and let's move on. I didn't reply. It wasn't just about the chair. It wasn't even about the bill. It was about everything that came before. Years of being treated like the emergency contact, the designated driver, the backup wallet. And now that I'd finally said no, they didn't know what to do with me. What made it worse, or maybe better, depending on how you look at it, was that Brooke's father apparently wasn't the type to take humiliation lightly. From what I gathered through a mutual friend of Mason's, a guy named Trent who'd always been more decent to me than most of them, Mr. Whitaker had a meltdown the night after the dinner. He'd paid for Brooke's private schooling, helped her start her marketing firm, and had apparently gone out of his way to plan a smooth, elegant engagement season, only to find out the groom's side lied about who paid for the venue, treated their own family member like trash, and stuck him with half the drinks tab after I refused to pay the rest. According to Trent, Brooke's dad said something at brunch the next day like, "If this is how they treat their own blood, what happens when you marry into it?" Ouch. The ripple effects hit Mason like a freight train. Suddenly, wedding planning was on pause. Brooke had gone back to her condo for a mental reset, and the Pinterest boards vanished. My mother, in damage control mode, sent me a long email. Not a text, not a voicemail, an actual email. The subject line was "please." The body of it was 5 paragraphs of sugar-coated manipulation, all about how she never meant to hurt me, how she never realized I felt excluded, and how it would mean so much to the family if I'd just be willing to sit down with Mason and smooth things over. But nowhere in that letter was the word sorry. Just, "We didn't realize. You misunderstood. Let's not let one silly night destroy the bond we've built." I stared at that last line for a while. What bond? Was it the bond where I drove 3 hours on Christmas Eve to bring gifts because Mom said Mason wasn't in the right headspace to shop for anyone? Or maybe the bond where I canceled my trip to Spain 2 years ago because Dad needed surgery and they didn't have the money for a home nurse? Or the bond where I co-signed the loan on their second car without even being asked twice? The same car Mason borrowed and never returned? I let the email sit in my inbox. I didn't reply. 2 days later, my Aunt Karen, Mom's sister, called me. That surprised me. She wasn't exactly warm and fuzzy, but she was sharp. A no-nonsense businesswoman who ran her own interior design firm and always had this air of barely concealed judgment. I hadn't spoken to her in over a year. "Eli," she said, "I heard about the dinner." "Of course you did," I said, trying to keep the sarcasm out of my voice. "I'm not calling to scold you," she said quickly. "I just want to say good. About time someone shook the tree. That caught me off guard." She sighed. "Look, I know how your parents are. Always brushing things under the rug. Always pretending things are perfect. But they've leaned on you too much for too long. And Mason? He's always gotten away with treating you like some kind of side character." "I appreciate that," I said quietly. "But why now?" "Because now the Whitakers are involved," she said, her voice dry. "And your mom's panicking. She called me yesterday and asked if I'd be willing to talk some sense into you." I raised an eyebrow. "And what did you say?" "I told her you didn't need sense, you needed space. And that maybe it's time they learned how to function without using you as scaffolding." That was the first time I felt like someone in my family actually saw me. Not as a checkbook, not as a punching bag, just as a person. Later that night, I got another text, this time from Mason. "Mason, bro, Brooke's dad just canceled the deposit on the wedding venue. Said we're not aligned in values. Fix this. Not can you help me? Not I'm sorry. Just fix this." And that's when I realized he still didn't get it. He still thought I was a tool in his toolbox. A pressure valve. A wallet with a heartbeat. So I decided to finally fix something, but not the way he meant. That night, I logged into the shared account I'd set up a year ago, the one Mason had used temporarily while he was unemployed, the one he never got around to closing, but had his gym membership and Spotify linked to. And I quietly moved the remaining funds into a new private savings account I'd started. Not much, just a couple thousand. But it was mine. Funds I'd left untouched out of some vague sense of brotherly loyalty. Then I called the bank and closed the joint line entirely. The next morning, Mason called me 4 times in a row. And when I finally picked up, his voice was frantic. "What did you do?" I didn't say anything. "Bro, I have a date with Brooke tonight. I was going to take her to that place she likes, and my card's bouncing. It says the account doesn't exist." "I know," I said. "I closed it." "You what?" "You can't just." "I can," I said calmly. "I can, and I did. You told me I wasn't family, remember? You don't get to use my money if I'm not even allowed at the table." He stammered for a second, then switched tactics. "Come on, man. Don't do this. You're jealous. Admit it. You've always hated that I got the attention. Now you're just throwing a tantrum because Brooke's dad took my side." I laughed, actually laughed. "Oh, Mason, you really think he's on your side?" There was silence. Then I said, "Don't worry, man. You'll figure something out. You always do. Maybe ask Mom to open a line of credit in your name again. Or maybe Brooke's dad can teach you how to stand on your own." And I hung up. I don't know what Mason did after that. But a few hours later, my phone buzzed again. This time, Not from him. It was an email. From Brooke. Subject line, I think we need to talk. I stared at Brooke's email for a while before opening it. The subject line, I think we need to talk, felt like the precursor to something big, something I wasn't entirely sure I was ready for. But curiosity and a strange sense of closure pushed me to click it. It was longer than I expected. Polite, but personal. Formal, yet laced with the tone of someone who was clearly unraveling. She started by saying she understood how awkward the dinner had been and that she hadn't realized how I'd been treated until everything came crashing down. She admitted she hadn't paid attention. I was so caught up in planning the perfect night, I didn't stop to see the full picture, she wrote. But that her father had been furious. Furious not just because of the financial deception, but because of the principle of it. He said if they can publicly humiliate someone who financially and emotionally supported the entire night, she wrote, then I need to seriously reconsider who I'm marrying into. Brooke didn't mince words. She said Mason had downplayed everything at first, calling it a minor misunderstanding. But once her dad showed her screenshots of the restaurant invoice, he'd requested a breakdown from the manager, the lies started to crack. Mason had told her I insisted on paying, that I didn't want to sit at the main table because I was introverted, that I'd left early because I had a work emergency. But once I talked to the waiter myself, yes, I called the restaurant, she wrote, the story fell apart completely. Then came the part one didn't expect. I ended the engagement last night. I blinked. She explained that it wasn't just the dinner, that the whole situation had pulled back the curtain on behaviors she'd previously excused. The casual entitlement, the way Mason talked about me behind my back, the way her concerns were constantly minimized. He kept saying you were overreacting, she said, but honestly, you're the only one who reacted with any dignity. She ended the email with a short note. I'm not writing this to pit myself against Mason or to drag you into drama. I just wanted you to know. I see it now, and I'm sorry I didn't see it sooner. I sat there for a long time, rereading it. Not because I didn't believe it, but because I wasn't used to being believed. The next few weeks were oddly quiet. The family group chat died out completely. Mason tried calling twice more, but after I didn't answer, he stopped. I learned through the grapevine that he'd moved back in with our parents. Brooke returned the ring. Her dad sent out an official cancellation notice to the wedding venue and vendors. A few of Mason's old friends dropped off the map entirely. Apparently, some of them had been riding his coattails to Brooke's connections. I thought that would be it, that it would all just settle into silence. But then one Sunday morning, I got a knock on my door. It was my mom. She stood on my front porch in a long cardigan, holding a Tupperware container of lasagna like it was a peace offering. Her eyes were puffy, her makeup thin. I didn't say anything, just opened the door a crack and waited. I brought you dinner, she said. I didn't reach for it. I just wanted to talk. No excuses. That part surprised me. I let her in. She sat at my kitchen table like she used to when I was a kid, same nervous fingers, same forced smile. But this time, no passive aggressiveness. No, you're just tired. No, he didn't mean it. She cleared her throat. I owe you an apology. I crossed my arms. Just one. Her face tightened, but she nodded. Fair. Probably more than one. She took a breath. I didn't see it. Not because it wasn't there, but because I didn't want to see it. Mason's always been loud. He takes up space. And you never asked for anything. You just did. You handled things. You showed up. I guess. We started treating you like a safety net. Something we assumed would always be there. That's the thing about safety nets, I said. People only look at them when they're falling. Never when they're climbing. Her lip trembled. She looked down at her hands. Your father and I were wrong. We let Mason get away with too much. We let him treat you like less. I stayed quiet. I know I can't undo that. I know a lasagna and a sorry won't fix years of imbalance. But I just wanted you to know, I see it now. And I'm sorry. I watched her for a moment. For the first time in my life, she wasn't dodging or deflecting. She wasn't defending Mason. She wasn't telling me to lower my voice or get over it. She was just sitting there, owning it. I nodded slowly. Thank you. We didn't talk for long after that. She left the lasagna. I walked her to the door. She didn't ask me to forgive Mason. She didn't ask me to call him. She just said, take care of yourself, and drove off. After that, things didn't magically repair, but they didn't get worse either. My parents started sending individual messages instead of group ones. Short ones. Respectful. My mom invited me to Thanksgiving in a few months, only if you feel up to it, she said. I haven't decided if I'll go. Mason, from what I hear, is back to working part-time at some startup he hates. Living rent-free. Avoiding eye contact with mirrors, probably. He hasn't reached out again. And I'm okay with that. As for me, I started doing more with my time. I took that postponed trip to Spain. I bought myself a new set of noise-canceling headphones. I read books on boundaries, on family dynamics, on quiet strength. I even started seeing a therapist. And not because I was broken, but because I realized healing doesn't come from waiting for someone else to say sorry. It comes when you look at your own reflection and say, you deserved better. And you gave it to yourself. So no, I didn't pay the bill that night. But I finally cashed in years of silent debt. And for the first time in my life, I'm not sitting next to the trash can. I'm at my own table. And that table is enough.